Next Generation NYCHA Housing Choice Voucher Program Briefing. March 2020. Next Generation NYCHA Housing Choice Voucher Program Briefing. Public housing represents 8% of rental housing stock in New York City. NYCHA is the largest landlord in the city. NYCHA houses over 380,000 people across all 5 boroughs, with a 1% average vacancy rate. This figure reflects the number served by NYCHA's public housing program. Next Generation NYCHA Vision. Safe, clean, and connected communities. Attention! COVID-19 pandemic guidance. All NYCHA call center operations will be suspended as of April 1, 2020, until further notice, for Section 8 requests, while the city is under a state of emergency. Walk-in centers are closed to the public, until further notice, while the city is under state of emergency. Please email general questions to s8.info@nycha.nyc.gov. Before we get started, write down any questions that you may have. Send your general questions by email to s8.info@nycha.nyc.gov. Agenda. Today we will walk you through the Housing Choice Voucher Program. 1. Housing Choice Voucher, HCV, Program Overview. 2. Responsibility of NYCHA, the family, and the owner. 3. Housing Choice Voucher. 4. Occupancy and Payment Standards. 5. Your Housing Choice. 6. Housing Quality Standards, HQS, Inspection Requirements. 7. Next steps, after finding the right unit. 8. What's in your briefing packet? We will now present an overview of the Housing Choice Voucher Program. About the HCV Program. The Housing Choice Voucher, HCV, Program is a federally funded program that provides rental assistance to eligible families. Eligibility is based on the total gross annual income and family size. The rent subsidy is paid to the owner, and the family pays their portion to the owner as well. All units must be inspected prior to moving in, and regularly thereafter. Now, we will discuss the responsibilities of NYCHA, the family, and the owner. NYCHA's responsibilities. In administering the Housing Choice Voucher Program, NYCHA must explain rules and regulations of the HCV program, issue vouchers and pay housing assistance payment, HAP, to the owner, on behalf of the voucher holder. Ensure all units in the program meet housing quality standards, HQS, by conducting a new rental, regular, special, and quality control inspections. Conduct an annual review of the family's income and composition information to determine continued eligibility. Conduct a rent reasonableness evaluation to ensure the proposed contract rent the owner is requesting is reasonable. The family's responsibilities. 1. It is the family's responsibility to find a vacant unit, or an available Section 8 unit. The owner of the unit cannot be an immediate family member unless a reasonable accommodation is approved by NYCHA. Sign a private lease agreement with the owner once the unit passes inspection, and you receive a move-in letter and comply with lease terms. Submit complete, accurate, and timely information and documentation to NYCHA. The family's responsibilities. 2. The family must comply with the annual review of family income and composition information. For example, marriages, births, adoptions, deaths, etc. This helps NYCHA determine a tenant's continued eligibility. Comply with requests for additional information. Cooperate with NYCHA for all inspections. Tips. Here are some tips when searching for a place to live. 1. Do not give the voucher to anyone, including the owner, agent, or property manager. 2. Confirm with the landlord that the apartment will meet the housing quality standards, HQS, and pass initial inspection. Note, the Housing Choice Voucher Program does not require the use of a broker to find an apartment. The owner's responsibilities. 1. It is the responsibility of the owner to sign and comply with the Housing Assistance Payment, HAP, contract, and local housing laws. Screen the family before executing the lease. Maintain the dwelling unit in accordance with housing quality standards. Collect the family's share of the rent, and do not request additional rent that exceeds the NYCHA approved rent. The owner's responsibilities. 2. It is the responsibility of the owner to follow federal laws which prohibit discrimination against an individual or family. Note: landlords have to accept your government-provided rental assistance. If you receive Section 8, a landlord who owns a building with 6 or more units must accept that rental assistance. Contact NYCHA when there is an unauthorized family move or a deceased tenant. The partnership between the tenant, NYCHA, and the owner. 1. This triangle illustrates the tenant, NYCHA, and the owner partnership. The partnership between the tenant, NYCHA, and the owner. 2. The document binding the tenant and NYCHA is the HCV Section 8 voucher. The tenant must comply with all family obligations, rules, and regulations to remain enrolled in the program. The document binding NYCHA and the owner is the Housing Assistance Payment Contract. The owner must also cooperate with the rules and regulations of the program to continue to receive payments. And lastly, the document binding the owner and the tenant is the lease agreement, which is a contract between the tenant and the owner. We will now review the Housing Choice Voucher. What is a Housing Choice Voucher? 1. The Housing Choice Voucher is the document that authorizes you to search for an eligible Section 8 unit. The document indicates the number of bedrooms the family is entitled to, the issue date, the expiration date, and a family's responsibilities under the program. The voucher is valid for 120 days after issuance date. NYCHA may extend this timeframe for good cause, such as a reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodations can be filed online via NYCHA's tenant self-service portal. If a reasonable accommodation is granted, the voucher will be extended 60 days. Note: if you are porting in from another public housing authority, PHA, your voucher expiration date will automatically be extended 30 days from the initial voucher expiration date. What is a Housing Choice Voucher? 2. Suspension of the term of the voucher. During the initial or extended term of the voucher, the family is required to submit a request for tenancy approval, Form HUD 52517. The term of the voucher is suspended, starting when the request for tenancy approval is submitted to the PHA, until the PHA notifies the family in writing whether the assisted tenancy has been approved or denied. This provision applies to all families who are leasing a unit, not just to families under Portability. Suspension applies even if a family that submits a request for tenancy approval decides to cancel such a request. In such cases, the suspension ends when the PHA learns of the cancellation. Under Portability procedures, the requirement to suspend the term of a voucher applies to the receiving PHA only. Housing Choice Vouchers are not for sale. HCV Section 8 vouchers are not for sale. If anyone offers to sell or process a Section 8 voucher for you, email the NYCHA Inspector General's office at ig@nycha.nyc.gov to report it. You should not give your voucher to anyone, including the owner or the broker. The Housing Choice Voucher Form. This is what your voucher will look like. It will include your voucher number, unit size, which is the number of bedrooms you are eligible for, today's date, and an expiration date, which is 120 days from your voucher issuance date. Now we will discuss the Occupancy and Payment Standards. Occupancy Standards. Occupancy standards are based on family composition. Applicants and participants with pregnant household members may be eligible for an increased voucher size, dependent upon total family composition, as stated in the HCVP occupancy chart. NYCHA Payment Standards. NYCHA sets its payment standards based on HUD Fair Market Rents, FMRs. Payment standards set the maximum monthly housing assistance payment, HAP, for the family, before deducting the total tenant payment by the family. Current NYCHA Payment Standards. These are the current NYCHA Payment Standards. Effective January 1, 2020. For new rentals, transfers, and recertification. NYCHA Utility Allowances. 1. For tenants who are responsible for paying their utilities. NYCHA gives a utility allowance. This shows the cooking gas and electric allowance. Other utility allowance rates can be found on the NYCHA Section 8 website. NYCHA Utility Allowances, 2. For tenants who are responsible for paying their utilities, NYCHA gives a utility allowance. This shows the oil, heat and hot water allowances. Other utility allowance rates can be found on the NYCHA Section 8 website. NYCHA Utility Allowances, 3. For tenants who are responsible for paying their utilities, NYCHA gives a utility allowance. This shows the gas, heat and hot water allowances. Other utility allowance rates can be found on the NYCHA Section 8 website. NYCHA Utility Allowances, 4. For tenants who are responsible for paying their utilities, NYCHA gives a utility allowance. This shows the electric, heat, hot water, and electric cooking range allowances. Other utility allowance rates can be found on the NYCHA Section 8 website. The 40% Rule, ensuring affordability for new rentals. The 40% rule ensures the affordability of a new rental. You are permitted to rent an apartment that exceeds the payment standard. However, your share of the rent will be 30% of the adjusted gross income plus any amount that exceeds the payment standard. NYCHA will not approve your Section 8 rental if your share of the rent is over 40% of your gross adjusted income. Upon an initial lease-up, the tenant is prohibited from paying more than 40% of their annual income towards rent. Moving within New York City. Voucher holders have the option of living anywhere in the 5 boroughs of New York City. First-time Section 8 voucher holders have the option of remaining in their unit provided it meets the housing quality standards, and the rent is reasonable and within the established payment standard. Portability, moving outside the New York City area. 1. Moving outside the New York City area is called portability. Voucher holders have the opportunity to live anywhere in the U.S., Puerto Rico, or the U.S. Virgin Islands, as long as there is a Housing Choice Voucher (HCV) program administered in that area. Voucher program participants. Contact your Veterans Affairs caseworker for additional rules on portability. Now we will review your housing choices. Portability, moving outside the New York City area. 2. To port your voucher, you must. Before moving to another jurisdiction, you must submit the voucher holder request for portability form, and receive approval for your request. This process can be initiated online in the Tenant self-service portal. Advise NYCHA at least 2 months before your Section 8 voucher expires. If you are already a Section 8 participant with an open transfer request, you must cancel your transfer request and ask for a portability transfer. Obtain the name, address, telephone and fax number and contact person of the housing authority, and submit it to NYCHA. NYCHA will provide this information to you if needed. Voucher program participants. Contact your Veterans Affairs caseworker for additional rules on portability. Portability, moving outside the New York City area. 3. Things to keep in mind when porting. The advantages of portability allow families the flexibility to relocate with assistance. However, you should familiarize yourself with your potential location before deciding to move there. Some people consider relocating for a new job or school. Proximity to other family members, increased choices for a home, etc. Comply with the rules and regulations of the receiving housing authority, which may differ from NYCHA. Portability procedures in the new jurisdiction could be different from NYCHA's. It is important to seek information and pay close attention to requirements at both PHAs. Portability, moving outside of the New York City area. 4. Policies applicable under portability. Once you port out, the receiving public housing authority, PHA, sets the standards for the program. The receiving PHA will set and manage the income limit applicable to the family. Voucher extensions available for searchers. Voucher payment standards. Suspension of voucher term after submission of request for tenancy approval. Policies and procedures related to tenancy. Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS, verification of citizenship. Requests for criminal background checks, where applicable. Executing the first lease under the voucher. Subsidy standards. Searching for a unit. Factors to consider. Searching for housing in low-poverty areas will help you gain access to higher quality housing, improved employment opportunities, playgrounds and better schools, community and educational resources, shopping and public transportation. New York City Census Tracts. For your reference, this is a map showing New York City's population below poverty by census tract. This map is also included in your briefing packet. NYCHA Housing Opportunities Map. The NYCHA Housing Opportunities Map is a resource that Section 8 voucher holders can use to find rental listings, job opportunities, schools, transportation, and other services in low-poverty neighborhoods. The map can be accessed on NYCHA's Section 8 self-service portal. Find an available Section 8 unit. There are many resources online that can be used to search for available units. Log on to the Tenant self-service portal to view exclusive Section 8 listings from owners registered with NYCHA. Screening the owner. Below are suggested questions to ask the owner or broker before renting from them. What is the monthly rent for the unit? Have you rented with Section 8 before? Have you rented this unit with Section 8 before? Will the rent include utilities, and if so, which are included? And which am I responsible for? Are there any fees associated with moving, such as broker fees or security deposits? Fair housing and equal opportunity. If you feel you have been discriminated against in your housing search, it is a violation of New York City Local Law 10, for an owner of a building with 6 or more units to refuse to rent to a Section 8 voucher holder. The Fair Housing Act of 1968, New York State and City Human Rights Law, prohibit discrimination in all aspects of housing based on age, race, color, creed, religion, national origin, gender, gender identity, sex, disability, pregnancy, sexual orientation, marital or partnership status, familial status, families with children under the age of 18, or families who are pregnant, adopting, otherwise securing legal custody of an individual under 18 years of age, source of income, occupation, immigration status, presence of children, status as a victim of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault or stalking. If you feel you have been discriminated against, you may file a complaint with the Department of Equal Opportunity, DEO, at 212-306-4468. Or you may contact the New York City Commission on Human Rights, New York State Division of Human Rights, and/or HUD. NYCHA will provide the voucher holder with a list of outside agencies with whom they can file claims. Access for persons with limited English proficiency. NYCHA provides language assistance to limited English proficiency, LEP, persons, to promote their meaningful access to NYCHA's programs and activities, in accordance with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development Notice entitled, Final Guidance to Federal Financial Assistance Recipients Regarding Title VI Prohibition Against National Origin Discrimination Affecting Limited English Proficient, LEP, persons, published in the Federal Register at 72 Fed. Reg 2732, January 22, 2007. NYCHA has a standard procedure implementing the HUD guidance regarding language assistance, which applies to the HCVP. Policies related to persons with disabilities. 1. NYCHA will make reasonable accommodation to persons with disabilities to ensure that they may fully access and use the HCVP and related services. NYCHA will provide an opportunity for an applicant or participant to request an accommodation on the application and other forms. This policy is intended to afford persons with disabilities equal opportunity to obtain the same results and gain the same benefits as those who do not have disabilities, and is applicable to all situations described in this plan. The individual making the request must meet requirements outlined in the Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988, Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the New York State and New York City human rights laws. Policies related to persons with disabilities. 2. NYCHA will review all requests and will make a determination based on the information provided, in accordance with Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act, If the need for the accommodation is not readily apparent, the family must explain the relationship between the requested accommodation and the disability. In order for NYCHA to approve a request for reasonable accommodation, the applicant or participant may be required to submit documentation from a medical professional to support the request. NYCHA may deny the request if it will cause an undue financial or administrative burden, or will change the fundamental nature of the program. NYCHA will notify applicants and participants in writing if it denies the request. Violence Against Women Act. The Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, is a federal law providing protections for applicants, tenants, and families assisted in the Section 8, public housing, and other HUD-funded programs. Under VAWA, victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking may not be denied admission to, denied assistance under, terminated from participation in, or evicted from Section 8 assisted housing on the basis of, or as a direct result of the fact that the applicant or participant is, or has been a VAWA victim. Under the regulations, NYCHA can terminate HCVP assistance to those who commit acts of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking against household members. VAWA also enables owners to evict abusers by bifurcating a lease, to remove a person who has committed the abuse. The regulations also permit NYCHA to terminate HCVP assistance to VAWA victims, or owners to evict VAWA victims, on independent grounds unrelated to their status as VAWA victims. Banned owners. This is a list of banned owners. NYCHA will not approve units managed by any of the entities listed. A copy of this list is also included in your briefing packet. We will now discuss Housing Quality Standard, HQS, requirements. What are Housing Quality Standards, HQS? The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, established Housing Quality Standards, HQS, to define the minimum criteria for safe housing. HQS standards require that every Section 8 unit have heat, hot and cold water, and an operable window in each living room and bedroom. In addition, all units must have a private bathroom and a fully equipped kitchen. Exceptions: a private bathroom and kitchen is not required. If a participant is residing in a single-room occupancy, SRO, unit, all SROs may not have a private bathroom and kitchen for residents. The unit must meet HQS standards before move-in. Non-life-threatening, NLT, provision for the HQS inspection process. NYCHA adopted the non-life-threatening, NLT, provision from the PIH Notice 2017-20, HA, effective September 1, 2018, for the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. With this provision, NYCHA updated its definition of life-threatening, LT, violations, and may approve the rental of a unit that fails for non-life-threatening conditions with the voucher holder's consent. Here is the updated list of 24-hour life-threatening, LT, violations. Gas, natural or liquid petroleum, leak or fumes. Electrical hazards that could result in shock or fire. Inoperable or missing smoke detector. Interior air quality, missing or non-functioning carbon monoxide detector. Gas or oil-fired water heater or heating, ventilation or cooling system with missing, damaged, improper, or misaligned chimney or venting. Lack of alternative means of exit in case of fire, or blocked egress. Other interior hazards. Deteriorated paint surfaces as defined by 24 CFR 35.110, in a unit built before 1978, that is to be occupied by a family with a child under 6 years of age, and any other condition subsequently identified by HUD as LT. In a notice published in the Federal Register. Any other condition identified by the administering PHA as life-threatening. In the PHA's administrative plan, prior to April 18, 2017. These conditions include: building in imminent danger of collapse. Illegal window gates on fire escapes. Non-life-threatening, NLT, provision for the HQS inspection process. Faster completion of new Section 8 rentals. New rental and conversion inspections, with only NLT violations, can proceed to have contract execution. The voucher holder must agree to accept the unit with the NLT conditions, unless such condition is waived by HUD. Following notice to the landlord of the NLT violations. Subsidy will begin with a 30-day window to correct the NLT violations. Opportunity to collect suspended subsidy. If subsidy is suspended after 30 days for failing to correct the NLT violations, there will be an opportunity to receive the suspended subsidy retroactively. Corrections that are made and immediately reported between Day 31 and Day 64 new rental, regular, and/or special HQS inspections will receive the suspended subsidy retroactively. Day 31 and Day 184 conversion inspections will receive the suspended subsidy retroactively. Repairs made after these required timeframes will result in the subsidy being abated. That is, no repayment of the suspended subsidy. Any reinstated payments will only be prospective. Conversion units that fail to pass HQS inspection by or on Day 180 will be suspended from the HAP. Top 5 reasons units fail HQS inspections. Electrical hazards, missing ground fault circuit interrupter, GFCI, exposed wires, loose or broken light fixtures, window conditions, improperly installed or missing window guards, incorrect screws used to install the guards, window broken, window does not stay up, ceiling and floor conditions, severely cracked or damaged ceiling, missing or damaged ceiling or floor tiles, exposed subfloor, uneven floor, tripping hazards, smoke or carbon monoxide detectors, missing batteries, missing detector, installed in the wrong location, kitchen or bathroom sink, leaking faucet, leaking pipes under sink, water temperature is under 110 degrees Fahrenheit or over 120 degrees Fahrenheit, hot and cold reversed. Note, if the unit fails for new rental or transfer HQS inspections, NYCHA may authorize the rental of a unit if it fails for non-life-threatening, NLT, conditions only. Lead paint hazards, what you need to know. Buildings built before 1978 may contain lead-based paint. Owner must disclose to you the presence of any lead-based paint in the unit. Lead found in paint, paint chips, and dust may pose serious health hazards, especially to young children. More information about lead paint is provided in the Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home booklet in your packet. This section will review the next steps after finding the right unit. Attention, after finding the right unit during the COVID-19 pandemic. 1. While the city is under a state of emergency, rental packages will be accepted via email at s8.rtu@nycha.nyc.gov. 2. Inspections will only be performed for new rental units. All others have been suspended until further notice. 3. For general questions, email us at s8.info@nycha.nyc.gov. After finding the right unit. 2. 1. Rental packet review. NYCHA will review and verify all information submitted. If the packet is complete, NYCHA will move forward with processing your request. 2. Inspection of the rental unit. Once your completed packet is accepted, NYCHA will contact the owner by phone to schedule the apartment inspection. If the dwelling unit fails inspection, NYCHA will notify the owner. The owner will have an opportunity to complete the necessary repairs. The owner can schedule a re-inspection once the repairs are completed by sending an email with the subject, re-inspection, to s8.info@nycha.nyc.gov. After finding the right unit. 3. 1. NYCHA will authorize you to move in, if the unit passes inspection and all required documentation has been reviewed and approved. NYCHA will contact your owner to sign a HAP contract. After NYCHA has executed the HAP contract, your approval letter to move in will be emailed to you. Only after you receive the move-in letter, you may move into the apartment. The letter will inform you of your share of the rent, at NYCHA's share of the rent. 2. Move into the unit. Move into the unit and comply with tenancy requirements. Annual requirements for HCV participants. Complete and submit the affidavit of income for all household members annually. This includes submitting any supporting verification, for example pay stubs, receipts. Provide access to NYCHA and HUD inspectors to inspect your unit. Obtain permission from both NYCHA and your owner when adding new members to your household. Exceptions include birth, adoptions, court-awarded custody. Note: NYCHA performs criminal background and sex offender checks on all new household members, 16 years of age and older. Remain in good standing. Comply with program requirements, including completing your annual recertification on time. Allowing access to your unit for HQS inspections. And if necessary, allowing access to the owner for repairs. Do not allow unauthorized persons to reside in your unit. Do not sublease the unit or a room in the unit. Do not use or possess illegal controlled substances. Do not commit violent crimes. Do not fail to report all household income and assets. Do not submit false statements and documents to NYCHA. Do not threaten NYCHA personnel. Do not vacate the unit without first notifying NYCHA. Briefing packet. We will now review owner documents. Request for tenancy approval, page 1. This is the request for tenancy approval document. The owner has to complete this form. It must be signed by the owner and participant. In box 3, the owner must enter the lease start and end dates, but does not have to submit a copy of the lease. Box 4 must include the exact number of bedrooms in the unit, and, if built after 1937, current certificate of occupancy, CO is required in box 5. Request for tenancy approval, pages 2 and 3. In the same document, the owner must also specify fuel type and who pays the utilities. Request for tenancy approval, page 4. Both the owner and tenant must sign on page 4 of the request for tenancy approval document. W9, request for taxpayer identification number and certification. This is what the W9, request for taxpayer ID number and certification form looks like. A P.O. box address cannot be used for this form. Section 8 Property Owner Registration Form, page 1. In this document, the owner enters information about the tenant, building, dwelling unit, and ownership information. It is important that the exact legal name of the owner is the same as the name that appears on the deed. The owner may enter a physical address or a P.O. box address. Section 8 Property Owner Registration Form, page 4. Page 4 of the Section 8 Property Owner Registration Form includes payment method for new enrollments only. New owners are required to complete this form. Disclosure of information on lead-based paint, and/or lead-based paint hazards, page 1. This is page 1 of the Disclosure of Information on Lead-Based Paint, and/or lead-based paint hazards form. Disclosure of information on lead-based paint, and/or lead-based paint hazards, page 2. This is page 2 of the Disclosure of Information on Lead-Based Paint, and/or lead-based paint hazards form. Section 8 Property Owner Documents, 1. The applicant or tenant must log into the NYCHA Tenant Self-Service Portal at https://self-service.nycha.info/e-service_enu/. To view the property owner documents, you must print these 4 documents for the owner and you to complete. 1. A Section 8 Property Owner Registration Form. 2. A request for taxpayer ID number and certification for the owner. 3. A request for tenancy approval. This form requires both tenant and owner signatures. 4. A disclosure of information on lead-based paint, and/or lead-based paint hazards, which require both tenant and owner signatures. Section 8 Property Owner Documents, 2. In addition, the owner must submit the following documents. If your unit is rent stabilized, a copy of the previous lease or division of housing and community renewal form. If the unit was built after 1937, another required document is the Certificate of Occupancy, or CO. If a Certificate of Occupancy is not available, a letter of no objection from the Department of Buildings must be submitted. In addition, a copy of the deed must be submitted. If the deed is unrecorded, the owner must also submit a letter from the closing attorney. Certain exceptions apply. Please refer to the briefing rental checklist, NYCHA Form 059.132 in your briefing packet, for a complete list of requirements. Section 8 Tenant Documents. You must provide the following documents listed below, if you would like to add a member to your household. Third-party verification, consent to release information. This form must be signed by all household members 18 years of age or older. Debts owed and terminations. This form must be signed by all household members 18 years of age or older. Declaration of citizenship status. Copy of the birth certificate. Copy of the Social Security card or alien registration card or I-94 number. Proof of income, assets, and expenses. Returning the briefing packet. 1. You or the property owner must return your briefing packet prior to the voucher expiration date by email to s8.rtu@nycha.nyc.gov. 1. Access the voucher online and type your name on the signature line. 2. Email the voucher to the owner's email address and request that the voucher be included when they submit the rental packet. 3. Next, the owner must complete all required documents and submit them to NYCHA electronically via email to s8.rtu@nycha.nyc.gov. Returning the briefing packet. 2. When returning your briefing packet, keep the following tips in mind. Return the packet with all pages together. Do not use whiteout on the forms. If you need a new form, print out a new one. Do not cross out or draw lines on the documents. Only write in the boxes on the forms. Submitting a transfer request. 1. You may submit a request for transfer online after you have resided in the unit for a year. After submission of the transfer request, you will receive a transfer approval letter by email. You will be able to view the rental documents in the tenant self-service portal. You must sign the voucher before you give it to the owner and submit a copy of the voucher with the rental package. If you need assistance, contact NYCHA. We're open 24/7, online, tenant self-service. 1. Section 8 Tenants and applicants can access information about their case or application online via the tenant self-service portal. To use the portal, you must be listed as the head of household, have a valid email address, and a valid social security number. New users will be prompted to create a unique username and password to log in. To access the portal, go to NYCHA Section 8 Tenant Self-Service Portal. https://www.nyc.gov/site/NYCHA/self-service.page. We're open 24/7, online, tenant self-service. 2. Registered Section 8 voucher holders may use the portal to view basic case information, complete their annual recertification and upload supporting documents, request an interim recertification and upload supporting documents, search for available Section 8 units, view their inspection date and reschedule if necessary, up to on time, request a special inspection, request a reasonable accommodation, request a 5-borough or portability transfer. Contact us by email. Contact NYCHA by email at s8.info@nycha.nyc.gov to request a reasonable accommodation. Update your personal information, for example, email address, telephone number, mailing address, etc. Have your owner schedule an inspection. Communicate changes in your tenancy. Questions? Email Section 8 questions. Please email all questions to s8.info@nycha.nyc.gov. To access the portal, go to NYCHA Section 8 Tenant Self-Service Portal, https://www.nyc.gov/site/NYCHA/section-8/self-service.page.